Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so if you use a phone, a bank account, rely on the power grid. Basically, if you're connected, you're living with the reality of cyber attacks. It's this constant background noise, almost.
It really is.
And we're not just talking small stuff. These are major incidents, constantly in the news, industrial-scale threats.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to maybe cut through some of that noise. We want to understand the core ideas, what is a cyber attack, really? And just grasp the sheer scale of it based on the research you brought.
Right. And to start, I think we need to be really precise. The sources define a cyber attack as basically any unauthorized action against computer systems that compromises what security pros call the CIA triad.
Ah, the classic CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Right.
Why frame it that way?
Well, it gets to the heart of what the attacker's trying to achieve. Confidentiality, stopping others from reading your data. Integrity, making sure the data isn't secretly changed.
Right.
And availability, ensuring you can actually get to your system and data when you need it. A successful attack hits at least one of those.
Got it.
But the key thing to understand, maybe the most important factor driving all this, is, well, inevitability.
Inevitability, that sounds a bit bleak.
It is, in a way. We depend on these incredibly complex, interconnected systems now. Phones, cloud services, industrial controls.
Everything talks to everything else.
Exactly. And that complexity means pretty much all software has flaws, bugs. And some of those bugs can be exploited. It's almost baked into the system.
And that inherent vulnerability, that complexity, leads to some frankly shocking numbers when you look at the scale. This isn't minor league stuff.
Oh, absolutely not. The sources pointed out, just in the first half of 2017, 2 billion data records were stolen or compromised.
2 billion in 6 months.
Yeah. It's hard to even picture that volume.
And the money involved.
Yeah.
Especially with ransomware. We saw figures like $2 billion in ransomware payments in 2017.
That's right. And that was double the year before.
What?
And a big driver for that jump was the rise of cryptocurrencies. Made it easier to demand payments anonymously,
Right. Harder to trace.
Much harder. And then, fast forward a bit, the pandemic hits. Everyone starts working remotely.
Suddenly, everyone's home network is part of the company network, essentially.
Exactly. More devices, more connections, often less secure ones. It just poured fuel on the fire. We saw a massive global spike in hacked and breached data because of it.
Okay, so flaws are inevitable because of complexity. But how do we know if a simple software bug is actually a security vulnerability? What's the difference?
That's a really important distinction. A bug might just make a program crash or give a wrong result. Annoying, but maybe not dangerous.
Okay.
It only becomes a vulnerability if that bug can be used to bypass security, to break one of those CIA principles: confidentiality, integrity, or availability.
Like using a bug to steal data or take over the system.
Precisely. And the most prized vulnerabilities, the really dangerous ones, are what we call 0 days.
0 days. Always sounds dramatic. What makes them so special?
It's all about timing and knowledge. A 0 day is a vulnerability that the software maker, the vendor, doesn't know about yet. Nobody in the public knows.
So there's no fix available.
Exactly. 0 days for the defenders to prepare once it's used. An attacker with a 0 day exploit has a weapon that's basically guaranteed to work until it's discovered and patched. That's why they fetch such high prices on certain markets.
So the good guys are always playing catch-up. And the sources mentioned a kind of messed up incentive structure here too, didn't they?
They did. Generally speaking, when a company's software vulnerability leads to a massive data breach or system failure for their customer, the software company itself isn't legally on the hook for all those costs.
So the company that got breached, or the individuals whose data was stolen, they bear the brunt.
Largely, yes. Which means there's less financial pressure on developers to invest heavily in making software super secure from the start. It's often cheaper and faster to ship code that might have flaws because the big costs of a breach fall elsewhere. It's an externality.
Which really leads us to this big shift in how organizations think about defense, right? If perfect security is, well, impossible or just wildly impractical, what do you do?
Yeah, the old way was all about trying to build impenetrable walls, detect intrusions, harden systems, stop everything from getting in.
Like a digital fortress.
Kind of, but the sources make it clear that approach just isn't cutting it anymore, especially against determined attackers. It's only partially effective.
So what's the alternative? This brings us to cyber resilience.
Exactly. Cyber resilience starts with a different assumption. assume the breach is going to happen. Maybe it already has.
Okay, that's a mindset shift.
It is. So the focus changes from preventing entry at all costs to protecting the most critical functions even during an attack. How do we keep the essential business running when the bad guys are already inside the network?
So how does that work in practice? What are companies actually doing?
Well, it involves things like zero trust models. Basically, don't automatically trust anyone or anything on the network, even if they're already inside. Verify everything.
Makes sense.
Also, microsegmentation, breaking the network into tiny isolated zones. So if one part gets compromised, the damage doesn't spread easily.
Containing the blast radius, sort of.
Exactly. And crucially, really solid business continuity plans. How do you operate if System A goes down? Plus, the basics still matter hugely. Training users seriously, don't click that weird link patching systems diligently, and encrypting sensitive data. If they steal it but can't read it, it's less valuable.
Okay, good fundamentals.
Yeah.
Now let's say an attacker does get through those initial layers.
Yeah.
How do they typically operate? The sources talk about this cyber kill chain. It sounds like a military thing.
It's a model, yeah, a step-by-step process attackers often follow, and it starts way before they actually hack anything. Step 1 is reconnaissance.
Spying.
Pretty much. Gathering information, checking websites, looking for employee info on social media, scanning the target's network for open doors, maybe trying some social engineering to get credentials.
Like figuring out who works in IT from LinkedIn.
Stuff like that, yeah. Once they've found a potential way in, a vulnerability, they move to step 2, weaponization.
Building the weapon.
Right. They craft the exploit code specifically for that vulnerability and bundle it with their malware, the actual harmful program they want to run.
Then they have to get it there. Step 3, delivery.
Delivery. And the sources are clear. The most common way is still phishing. Emails with dodgy links or attachments.
Still works surprisingly often.
It does. But also drive-by downloads. You just visit a compromised website and boom, the malware installs itself without you clicking anything else.
Scary.
And we shouldn't forget insiders. Sometimes an employee or contractor delivers the payload, maybe accidentally by plugging in a USB stick or sometimes maliciously.
Okay, so the weapon is delivered. Then step 4, exploitation. That's the moment of impact.
That's when the malware actually runs, exploits the vulnerability, and usually sets up shop. Often it creates a backdoor.
Like leaving a hidden way back in for later.
Exactly. Gives them persistent access, remote control.
And finally, step 5, persistence and activity. This is where they actually do whatever they came to do. What kind of things happen here?
Depends on the goal. If it's espionage, they might just sit quietly and eavesdrop. Very hard to detect.
Says watching.
Yeah. Or they could use the compromised machine as part of a botnet. Thousands of these zombie computers all controlled together.
What are botnets used for?
Launching huge denial-of-service attacks, DDoS, to overwhelm a target and knock it offline, sending massive amounts of spam. But the really big moneymakers now are ransomware, encrypting all your files and demanding payment to unlock them.
The nightmare scenario for businesses.
Totally. Or cryptojacking, secretly using your computer's power to mine cryptocurrency for the attacker. Slows your machine down, runs up your power bill.
This whole kill chain, it sounds very organized, professional almost.
Yeah.
So who are these attackers? Is the stereotype of the lone hacker in a basement totally wrong now?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, lone hackers exist, but the major threats we worry about, they tend to come from organized crime groups, often working like real businesses, or hacktivists with a political agenda, and of course, state-sponsored or state-affiliated groups.
Governments hacking each other or others?
Yes. But it's also crucial to remember, like we said with delivery, insiders often enable these attacks, even if unintentionally. Skipping a security step because it's faster, for example.
But the big shift, the really transformative thing the sources highlighted, is this idea of cybercrime as a service.
Right. This is huge. Criminal groups realized, hey, maybe developing these sophisticated attack tools is risky and using them is risky, but what if we just rent them out?
Like a software subscription, but for crime.
Exactly. They specialize. One group builds the ransomware, another builds the botnet, another finds the 0 days. Then they offer these tools and services on the dark web. They make money more reliably with less direct risk.
So they're selling the weapons, not necessarily firing them themselves. Who's buying?
Well, worryingly, people who don't have the deep technical skills. You can literally rent a botnet to launch a DDoS attack. You can subscribe to a ransomware as a service platform.
So it lowers the barrier to entry for causing major disruption. You just need money, basically.
Pretty much. Cryptocurrency and a willingness to use these services, it democratizes cybercrime in a really bad way.
Okay, so we've got this Vast, complex target landscape, sophisticated attackers, and now this whole service economy for crime tools. Let's talk about the impact, the harm. The sources had a pretty detailed breakdown.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just losing data. Obviously, there's digital damage, data destroyed, systems corrupted, but think about the economic losses.
Right, the cost to investigate, fix things, maybe regulatory fines.
Yeah.
Lost business while systems are down.
Huge costs.
Yeah.
And then there's potential physical damage.
How so?
Think about attacks on critical infrastructure. Water treatment plants, power grids, hospitals. Disrupting those can cause real physical harm, injury, even death. There's also psychological harm for individuals whose private info gets leaked, and massive reputational damage for the company that got breached.
And the biggest societal risks seem tied to that critical infrastructure point.
Definitely. That's where vulnerability meets vital services. Power, water, finance, healthcare, they all run on these complex cyber-physical systems now. While organized crime is behind most data breaches, like 55%, often going after consumer data for fraud.
Like identity theft, credit card scams.
Right. But attacks on infrastructure, even if less common, have the potential for the most widespread harm.
And we saw that play out with the Colonial Pipeline attack, didn't we?
Perfect example. The ransomware didn't necessarily break the pipeline itself, but it shut down the billing and management systems. The company couldn't operate it safely or effectively.
And the result was?
Panic buying, gas stations running out of fuel all up the U.S. East Coast, massive disruption, huge economic ripples, just because a key system became unavailable. It shows how dependent we are.
What's really unnerving, though, is how long attackers can apparently operate undetected. I saw a figure in the research. The average time to even discover a breach is something like 197 days.
Yeah, that's the average, almost 7 months.
7 months. They could be doing anything in that time.
Absolutely. And that detection time varies. Attacks trying to steal data quietly, confidentiality, are often harder to spot than something like a DDoS attack availability, which is immediately obvious because the service goes down.
So spies are sneakier than vandals, basically.
You could put it that way. State actors, especially, want to stay hidden to keep using their valuable tools, like 0 days.
So, okay, eventually the alarm bells ring. The company realizes they've been hit. What happens then? What's the response process?
It usually starts with detection confirmation using security tools, looking for those indicators of compromise, the digital fingerprints of the attack. Then, immediately, evidence collection.
Why evidence first?
Because some digital evidence is volatile, it disappears quickly if systems are shut down or rebooted, and you need a clean chain of custody if there's any hope of prosecution later.
Right, for legal reasons.
Exactly. Then comes the huge task of recovery.
Containing the damage and cleaning up.
Yeah. Isolating affected systems, maybe shutting parts down, patching the vulnerability they used, often rebuilding servers or workstations from scratch. And the really hard part, making absolutely sure all the malware is gone, all the backdoors are closed.
Sounds like a nightmare. Now, one of the biggest frustrations must be figuring out who did it. Attribution.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. Attackers use proxy servers, stolen accounts, route traffic through multiple countries. It's designed to obscure their origin.
Easy to hide online.
Very. And companies are often less interested in who did it than just getting back online. Law enforcement and intelligence agencies care more, but it's tough. Plus, you have the problem of false flag attacks.
Where they deliberately make it look like someone else was responsible.
Exactly. Planting digital clues that point to a rival nation or group. It makes attribution even harder and riskier.
High-tech deception. So what about the law? Are these actions actually illegal?
Oh, yes. Cyberattacks generally fall under national cybercrime laws. If they happen in a conflict situation, international law applies. They could be violations of sovereignty or even war crimes if they target critical civilian infrastructure deliberately.
And companies face legal issues too.
Yes, especially now with data breach notification laws in many places. If customer data is compromised, companies often have a legal duty to inform those affected. Failure to do so brings its own penalties.
So we've gone from the basic definition, that CIA triad, through the sheer scale, the kill chain, the rise of cybercrime as a service, and the long delays in detection. It feels like the big takeaway, running through all the research, is this move away from seeking perfect security.
Which seems impossible.
Towards building resilience, being able to function despite being compromised.
That really seems to be the key message, and maybe that leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
Given how hard attribution is, how difficult prosecution can be, and the fact that often the biggest costs of a breach the harm to consumers, the disruption aren't fully borne by the company whose security failed. They're sort of externalities.
Right, society pays part of the price.
Does the current system actually create strong enough incentives for companies to invest deeply in prevention? Or, realistically, is widespread adoption of cyber resilience, focusing on limiting the damage rather than perfect prevention, simply the only practical way forward in our complex, interconnected world?
A tough question. Is resilience the only answer? Because prevention is just too hard or too expensive under the current rules. Something definitely to think about.
Imagine you're feeling unwell, maybe a bit run down, and you're looking for something natural, something gentle. You might well stumble upon something called homeopathy. But what is it exactly?
Yeah.
Where did it come from? And the big question, does it actually work?
Right.
That's what we're diving into today. We've waded through, well, quite a stack of sources, historical accounts, modern scientific reviews, to really unpack this fascinating and often pretty debated system of alternative medicine.
Indeed. And our mission today really is to give you a comprehensive, unbiased understanding. We want to lay out its core principles, its journey through history, and crucially, what the science says about its claims.
So you can connect the dots.
Exactly. The what and the why behind it all. It's a topic that's generated strong opinions for centuries.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's jump right into the core concept.
Sounds good.
So, at its heart, homeopathy is often described as, well, a pseudoscientific system of alternative medicine. Can you maybe break down what pseudoscientific means here?
Sure. Essentially, it means it looks or presents itself as scientific, but its fundamental ideas, they don't really hold up to empirical testing.
Oh, okay.
And often they actually contradict well-established scientific laws. Think physics, chemistry,
Right.
especially when we get to the delusions.
Right. And it all started quite a while ago.
Yeah, way back in 1796. Conceived by a German physician, Samuel Hahnemann.
So, what was Hahnemann's big idea? The doctrine that really sets homeopathy apart?
What's really fascinating is his central doctrine, similibus curenter,
Which means?
like cures like.
Yeah.
The basic idea is that a substance which causes certain symptoms in a healthy person can, in really, really diluted forms, cure similar symptoms in someone who's sick.
Okay, like cures like sounds almost intuitive, like fighting fire with fire, sort of?
Kind of. And you have to remember, this was a pretty radical idea compared to the medicine of his day, which was often quite harsh. Think bloodletting, purging, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Right. So how did he claim to achieve this cure with the remedies? This is where the famous or infamous homeopathic dilution comes in, isn't it?
Precisely. And this is the really unique part, and for many people, the most difficult part to accept.
I can imagine.
Homeopathic preparations are made through serial dilution. You take a substance, dilute it, shake it, dilute it again, shake it again, over and over.
To the point where...
The point where often the final product is chemically identical to the diluent, just water or alcohol.
Right.
Statistically, there's often not a single molecule of the original substance left.
Not a single molecule. Wow. So what's supposed to be doing the work then? It's not just dilution. You mentioned shaking.
Yes, that's key. Between each dilution step, they perform something called succussion,
Succussion.
which involves hitting or shaking the mixture vigorously. Homeopaths claim this process makes the water or alcohol remember the original substance even after it's gone chemically.
Remember it.
Yeah, and that this somehow enhances its spirit-like medicinal powers.
Mm.
That's Hahnemann's term. It definitely raises questions about, well, how matter works.
Spirit-like medicinal powers.
Right.
Okay. And what about the root causes of disease? Hahnemann had a theory for that too, right?
He did.
Yeah.
In his main book, The Organon of the Healing Art, he introduced this concept of miasms.
Miasms, like bad air.
Sort of, but more like underlying infectious principles or peculiar morbid derangements of vital force. His words, again, that he believed were the root of chronic diseases.
So not just the surface symptoms.
Exactly. He thought that just treating surface symptoms like a skin condition actually pushed the disease deeper into the body, causing problems with internal organs later.
Oh, okay.
So for him, just treating the symptoms wasn't enough because the underlying miasm was still there. This theory, though, it was often criticized, even by some homeopaths, as maybe a way to explain why treatments didn't always work as expected.
Interesting. So connecting the dots here. Homeopathy really came out of rejecting the medicine of the time, offering this very different, quite unconventional view of disease and how to prepare remedies.
That's a good summary, yes.
Now, it's easy for us, looking back, to kind of raise an eyebrow at these concepts. But homeopathy wasn't just a flash in the pan. It actually got hugely popular, especially in the 19th century. What was going on then?
Well, think about mainstream medicine back then. We mentioned bloodletting, purging, dosing with things like mercury. Pretty aggressive, often harmful stuff.
Right, not exactly gentle.
Not at all. So in that context, homeopathic remedies, which are essentially just water or sugar pills, were rarely harmful. They were inert.
Ah, so patients going to homeopaths often did better simply because they weren't being actively harmed by their treatment?
That's a huge factor, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily that homeopathy itself was curing them in the way we think of medicine today, but it was definitely less harmful than the alternatives.
That's a crucial point. I read that during things like cholera epidemics, death rates in homeopathic hospitals were sometimes lower. That must have seemed incredibly convincing.
Absolutely. And that relative success, even if it was indirect, really helped it spread. It got to the U.S. in 1825, and by 1900 you had, 22 homeopathic colleges, 15,000 practitioners just in the States.
Wow.
And it even pushed mainstream medicine a bit, highlighting the dangers of those really harsh treatments.
But not everyone bought into it, right? Even back then.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
There were strong critics from early on. Sir John Forbes, Queen Victoria's doctor, called the delusions an outrage to human reason back in 1843.
An outrage to human reason. Strong words.
Yeah. James Young Simpson quipped about no poison, the billionth or decillionth of which would harm a fly. And Oliver Wendell Holmes in the U.S. wrote a critical essay way back in 1842. Eventually, the last exclusively homeopathic medical school in the U.S. closed in 1920. It saw a big decline.
So it faded, but then it came back. What happened in the 20th century?
It saw a pretty significant resurgence starting around the 1970s. This coincided with the rise of the New Age movement.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other factors played a role too. Things like chemophobia, sort of an aversion to synthetic chemicals, became more common. And people liked the longer, more attentive consultations homeopaths offered.
Right, that personal attention.
Exactly. And importantly, there was a legal aspect. The 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in the U.S., which was actually sponsored by a homeopathic senator, recognized homeopathic preparations as drugs. That gave them a kind of regulatory foothold for decades.
A foothold. Okay, so where are we now, 21st century? Has the scientific community maybe softened its stance?
Quite the opposite, actually. This century has seen, if anything, renewed and stronger criticism. We've had numerous large-scale reviews, meta-analyses.
And what do they find?
They consistently show a lack of good scientific evidence that homeopathy works beyond a placebo effect. As a result, national health bodies in places like Australia, the UK, Switzerland, France, they've concluded it's ineffective.
So they're pulling funding.
Many are, yes. The UK's National Health Service, the NHS, stopped funding it in 2017. France stopped reimbursements in 2021. And there have even been lawsuits against big retailers for selling these products without clear disclaimers about the lack of evidence.
Wow, okay, so if someone does decide to try homeopathy today, what's that initial visit like? You mentioned it's longer.
Yeah, the consultation is really central. It can be quite long, not just 10-15 minutes, sometimes over an hour.
An hour? What do they cover?
Pretty much everything. Your detailed medical history, of course, but also things they call modalities, how your symptoms change with things like weather, time of day, position, your mood, your food likes and dislikes, your sleep patterns, your overall physical, mental, and emotional state. It's very holistic.
That does sound incredibly thorough.
And proponents often point to this holistic, attentive approach as a key benefit. Even if, the perceived benefit might stem more from that interaction than the pill itself.
Right, so once they have this whole symptom picture, how do they pick the remedy?
They try to match your unique symptom picture to a drug picture, described in big reference books like Materia Medica or repertories.
Matching symptoms.
In what's called classical homeopathy, the goal is to find one single remedy, the simillimum, that best matches the totality of your symptoms. Other approaches might use combinations of remedies.
And what are these remedies actually made from? I heard they can use some pretty unusual stuff.
The range is really broad.
Yeah.
Plants, minerals, animal products, even synthetic substances sometimes. They use Latin names, supposedly for precision.
Examples.
Oh, things like arsenicum album, that's arsenic oxide. Natrum muriaticum is just table salt. Latisis muta is venom from the bushmaster snake. Opium is used too.
Snake venom. Arsenic. But super diluted, obviously.
Extremely diluted, yes. Usually a drop of the liquid dilution is put onto a sugar pill, typically lactose, and then it evaporates, leaving the imprint.
Okay. But I saw some even wilder examples mentioned in the sources beyond those kinds of substances. Things like paper.
Ah, yes. This is where it gets really unconventional, even for homeopathy. You have things like isopathy. That's where the remedy is made from the actual disease product itself, like, say, fecal discharge or blood. These are called nosodes.
So using the disease to treat the disease, kind of like a vaccine idea, but homeopathic.
Sort of, yeah. Though there's zero scientific evidence they work like vaccines.
Right.
Then there's tautopathy, using homeopathic preparations of drugs or vaccines you've already taken, supposedly to undo past harm.
Oh, okay.
And then you get into imponderables, where the remedy isn't even from a substance. It's supposedly from things like X-rays or sunlight captured in alcohol or lactose.
Captured sunlight. How?
Good question. And yes, you mentioned paper preparations, literally writing the remedy name and dilution on paper and putting it near the patient. These extreme practices. Well, even many classical homeopaths criticize them as bordering on magic or superstition.
Yeah, that really stretches the definition of medicine. Okay, we've covered the concepts, the history. But let's get to the core scientific question. What does modern science actually say about whether homeopathy works?
The scientific and medical consensus is pretty unequivocal. Homeopathy is considered a pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience, straight up?
Yeah. I mean, everything we know about physics, chemistry, biology, biochemistry, it all contradicts homeopathy's core principles. The remedies themselves are typically biochemically inert.
Meaning?
Meaning they have no active ingredients, they don't show any effect on any known disease beyond what you'd expect from a placebo.
And this comes back to those dilutions we talked about, that statistic about not even one molecule being left. Can you give us that analogy again, just to grasp the scale?
Sure. The implausibility is just immense from a chemistry standpoint. Once you get past a certain dilution level, it's around a 12C in homeopathic terms, which is 1 part in 10 to the power of 24.
10 with 24 zeros.
Right. At that point, the laws of chemistry say it's statistically unlikely you'll find even one single molecule of the original substance left. The analogy often used for 12C is dissolving a tiny pinch of salt into the entire North and South Atlantic Oceans combined.
Both oceans, wow. And some remedies are diluted even more, aren't they?
Oh, much more. Robert L. Park pointed out the popular flu remedy, oscillococcinum. It's a 200C dilution.
200C.
He calculated that to be sure of getting just one original molecule in your dose, you'd need a pill bigger than the known universe. Actually, multiple universes worth of molecules. It just defies basic chemistry and physics.
Okay, that scale is just mind-boggling. So if there are no molecules, what's the explanation from proponents? This is the water memory idea, right?
Exactly. Modern advocates often lean on this idea of water memory, that the water somehow retains a memory or imprint of the substance that was diluted in it.
But does that hold water, scientifically speaking?
No. It's completely inconsistent with everything we understand about the physics and chemistry of water and solutions. Molecules in liquid water are constantly moving, forming, and breaking bonds. There's no known mechanism for water to stably remember solutes like that long after they're gone.
And wouldn't water remember everything it's ever touched?
That's another huge logical problem, yes. How does the water know to only remember the intended homeopathic substance and not the countless other things it's inevitably come into contact with throughout its history? Science has never shown any detectable effect, biological or otherwise, from this supposed memory.
Okay. And what about the other counterintuitive claim that higher dilutions are somehow stronger?
Yeah, that directly contradicts basic pharmacology. In medicine, the effect of a drug depends on its concentration, the dose-response relationship. More drug usually means more effect, up to a point. Homeopathy claims the opposite. Some try to bring up a phenomenon called hormesis, where very low doses of something might have an opposite effect to high doses. But even hormesis doesn't explain or support the extreme, vanishing dilutions used in homeopathy, nor the idea that potency increases with dilution.
So with all these fundamental contradictions, what do the actual clinical trials show when they test homeopathic remedies against placebos?
Well, there have been many clinical trials and systematic reviews. Those are studies that pool the results of multiple trials. And the consistent finding from the highest quality research is that homeopathic preparations have no effects beyond placebo.
No effects beyond placebo.
Correct. A major review by the Cochrane Collaboration in 2010, looking at the best evidence, concluded just that. Homeopathy fails to demonstrate that homeopathic medicines have effects beyond placebo.
So any benefit people feel is likely?
It's likely due to other factors. The placebo effect itself is real. The detailed consultation, feeling listened to, that can have a positive psychological effect. Or maybe the person was just going to get better anyway, the natural course of the illness. But it's not the remedy itself doing anything specific.
Okay. So, given this overwhelming lack of scientific evidence, what are the real-world implications? Ethics, safety? Is it basically harmless if it's just a sugar pill or water?
That's the common assumption, but it's not always the case. While one review by homeopaths back in 2000 suggested they were unlikely to cause severe reactions, a more rigorous systematic review in 2012 concluded that, actually, homeopathy has the potential to harm patients and consumers in both direct and indirect ways.
Harm how?
Well, Professor Michael Baum, a surgeon, has called it a cruel deception.
Strong words again.
Yeah.
How could it cause direct harm if there's usually nothing in it?
Usually, yes. But there have been rare cases due to either improper preparation or sometimes intentionally using low dilutions where the original substance, which might be toxic like belladonna or arsenic, is still present at detectable, potentially dangerous levels.
Really?
Yes, there are documented reports linking some homeopathic products to things like arsenic poisoning or seizures. The FDA, for instance, had to warn consumers about Zycam homeopathic cold remedies causing loss of smell and later issued safety alerts for homeopathic teething gels containing unsafe levels of belladonna after reports of serious adverse events in infants.
Belladonna and teething gels. That's truly alarming. Okay, so that's direct harm. What about indirect harm?
Indirect harm is arguably much more common and maybe more insidious.
How so?
It happens when patients choose homeopathy instead of proven evidence-based medicine for serious conditions.
Delaying real treatment.
Exactly. For things like cancer, HIV, malaria, severe infections, even depression. Delaying effective treatment can significantly worsen the outcome, sometimes tragically. There are documented cases of people dying because they relied solely on homeopathy and refused or delayed conventional care.
And sometimes practitioners advise against conventional treatment.
Some do, yes. They might claim conventional drugs will suppress the disease or push it deeper, echoing Hahnemann's miasm theory. That kind of advice can obviously have fatal consequences.
And this extends to prevention too, right? Like vaccines.
Yes, definitely. The promotion of homeopathy as a preventive measure, sometimes called homeoprophylaxis, is highly controversial.
Using homeopathic remedies instead of vaccines?
Precisely. Some homeopaths actively discourage standard immunizations and promote these homeopathic no-sodes made from disease products as alternatives. Public health organizations universally condemn this as dangerous and irresponsible, as there's no evidence these no-sodes provide any protection against infectious diseases.
Okay, so given all these concerns, lack of efficacy, potential for harm, how is homeopathy regulated around the world? It sounds like it must vary a lot.
It varies wildly, yes. In Europe, some countries used to cover it under public health systems, but that's changing. We mentioned France and the UK stopping funding. Germany is also phasing out coverage.
And rules about who can practice.
Also varies. In the UK, for example, there's no legal regulation of the homeopaths, technically. Anyone can call themselves one. The EU does require homeopathic products to be registered, but importantly, they don't require proof of efficacy like normal medicines do.
What about other places?
It's a real mix. India is interesting and actually recognizes homeopathy as one of its official national systems of medicine under a government department called AYUSH.
Wow, official recognition.
Yes. In the U.S., the FDA has been tightening regulations recently. They've removed old enforcement policies that basically allowed unapproved homeopathic drugs onto the market easily, and the FTC now requires their marketing claims to meet the same evidence standards as other health products, which is tough given the lack of evidence.
And Canada?
Canada regulates them as natural health products, but a CBC investigation famously highlighted loopholes by getting a license for a completely made-up homeopathic remedy for kids. So regulation is really inconsistent globally.
Okay. This deep dive has mostly been about human health, but I know homeopathy is also used for animals. Does the whole, cures-like thing apply to pets and livestock, too?
It does. So-called veterinary homeopathy actually goes back to Hahnemann himself. It's sometimes promoted in, the organic farming sector.
Oh, does it work any better in animals?
Logically, it should work even less effectively. Think about it. Much of the perceived benefit in humans comes from the placebo effect, the consultation experience, the belief you're getting treatment.
Animals don't have that psychological expectation.
Exactly. While the owner might experience a kind of placebo effect by believing their pet is getting better after giving a remedy, The animal itself isn't getting any physiological benefit from an inert substance.
So there are welfare concerns.
Big time. If an animal has a real illness, choosing homeopathy instead of effective veterinary medicine means delaying proper treatment, causing unnecessary suffering. Major veterinary bodies, like the British and Australian veterinary associations, strongly advise against it or cannot endorse it because there's simply no reliable scientific evidence it works for animals.
Right, okay. This has been a really fascinating and honestly quite eye-opening deep dive into homeopathy. We've traced it from Hahnemann's original, cures-like idea and those mind-bending delusions. We've seen its ups and downs through history, understood the consultation, the weird and wonderful preparations, and importantly, measured it against modern science.
And I think if we connect all those threads, the big picture becomes pretty clear.
Yeah.
Historically, you can see how it might have seemed beneficial compared to the harsh medicine of the 19th century.
That accidental advantage.
Right. But based on contemporary science, the evidence consistently shows the remedies themselves don't do more than a placebo. And that really raises important questions about ethics, about patient safety, and just about critical thinking when we look at health claims.
So what's the takeaway for you, our listener? I guess it means approaching health claims, especially seemingly simple or natural ones, with a really discerning eye.
Yeah. Understanding that difference between maybe a personal belief or anecdote and solid scientific evidence.
And recognizing that even if something seems harmless, choosing it instead of effective care can have real consequences, both direct and indirect.
Absolutely. And maybe for a final provocative thought to leave you with, consider this. If a big part of homeopathy's perceived benefit comes from that long, empathetic consultation, that feeling of being heard,
Yeah.
what lessons could conventional medicine maybe learn from that? But the sheer power of the patient-practitioner relationship itself, completely separate from whatever pill or potion is prescribed.
That's a really great question to ponder, something for us all to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really getting into the work of Frank Gehry, the mind behind some of the most complex, dazzling buildings out there.
Absolutely. Frank Owen Goldberg, born back in 1929, Canadian-American architect.
Yeah.
His name is just, well, it's synonymous with those buildings that look like they're defying gravity, isn't it?
Totally, like those cascading ribbons of titanium you see sometimes. You just know it's a Gehry.
Right. But that's the surface image, isn't it? The big, shiny, expensive spectacle.
Exactly. And our mission today is to dig deeper. We want to get past that whole Starkitect label, which, he famously hates.
He really does push back on.
Yeah. We want to uncover the foundations, his philosophy. How did the guy who mastered these incredible complex curves actually start out celebrating industrial grit?
Well, that's the core tension, isn't it? It's fascinating. His rise in the, 70s. It was built on mixing the totally mundane stuff like chain link fencing, raw plywood, corrugated steel.
Everyday stuff.
Everyday stuff, exactly, with these really dynamic, kind of radical forms. So it's an ideological deep dive, too, you could say. How does that desire for social responsibility end up causing a global architectural earthquake?
Right. So if you've ever stared at one of his buildings and just thought, how on earth did they even build that? Well, this deep dive is for you. We're going to try and unpack the process behind what looks like chaos.
And maybe the best place to start is, well, literally at the foundation, his childhood creativity, the scrap heap even.
The scrap heap. Okay, tell me more.
It's a great story, actually, because it explains so much about his lifelong thing with materials. Gehry often talks about his grandmother, Leah Kaplan. She was like his first design mentor.
Grandmother.
Yeah. On Saturday mornings, she'd keep him busy building these little cities out of scraps of wood, stuff swept up from the floor of her husband's hardware store.
Ah, okay, so that's the first piece right there. That connection between just playing, being creative, and using unconventional, cheap materials that starts super early.
Exactly. And you can see why his early experiments used things like raw plywood and chain link.
Yeah.
They were just available, not fancy.
It makes sense. He had that spark, but finding his own voice, architecturally speaking, it wasn't exactly a straight line, was it?
Not at all. And just quickly, we should mention the name change. He went from Goldberg to Gehry in 1954. His then-wife, Anita, had concerns about anti-Semitism, especially as he was starting his career.
Right. Important context. Okay, so after USC, he goes to Harvard's Graduate School of Design in '56 for city planning. And this is where he really leans into this progressive, almost socialist view of socially responsible architecture.
In Harvard, it wasn't a good fit,
Mm.
apparently. He felt pretty disillusioned by the, let's say, academic establishment there.
Disillusioned how?
Well, he felt his ideas about social responsibility weren't really respected. And the story goes, the thing that really pushed him out, it's kind of legendary, actually.
Oh, do tell.
A professor apparently invited him to discuss some kind of secret architectural project. Sounds intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Turned out it was a design for a palace for the Cuban dictator, Fulgencio Batista.
Wow. Okay, so Gehry just walked away.
He walked away from Harvard. And you can see how that rejection of, I guess, architecture being complicit with power and wealth, how that would fuel his desire to use it more as a critique.
Which leads him towards treating architecture more like radical sculpture.
Exactly. Now, some people label his style deconstructivist, that movement focusing on fragmentation, nonlinear stuff, challenging traditional harmony. But Gehry himself, he always resists labels, focuses on the intent.
But the look, the aesthetic of his early stuff, it definitely connects to that California funk art scene in the 60s and 70s, doesn't it?
Oh, strongly, yeah. For anyone listening who doesn't know, funk art was pretty anti-establishment. It took cheap, found, everyday objects and elevated them. Made art out of industrial grit, basically.
That feels like a crucial link then, because Gehry's core idea, as he puts it, is that architecture is sculpture. Three-dimensional object, therefore sculpture.
Right. And if it's sculpture, well, why can't it use any material, regardless of how much it costs or what people usually think of it?
So him putting chain link fencing on his own house in Santa Monica, that wasn't just him being weird, it was a statement.
A deliberate provocation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like saying, why does architecture always have to be about luxury and classical rules?
Yeah.
It's that raw aesthetic. And yeah, some critics saw it as a real critique of consumerism.
And then he couples that rawness with really innovative uses of materials like titanium and stainless steel, especially in those famous curved forms later on. He wasn't just using raw plywood, he was showing that material choice itself could be revolutionary.
Precisely. And maybe nothing shows his rejection of formalism better than, well, his thing for fish.
Ah, yes, the fish. Okay, I've always wondered about that. It seems so random. Where did that come from? The fish lamps, the giant sculpture?
It apparently started in a conversation. He was kind of critiquing his peers, architects who were still just endlessly recreating Greek temples in classical forms. He felt they were stuck.
Right. And he hit them with that classic line about the evolutionary timeline.
That's the one. 300 million years before man was fish. Why are you stopping at the Greeks? Basically asking, why limit your inspiration?
So the fish becomes this symbol for him of deep history, fluidity, moving beyond those rigid classical forms.
Exactly. It represents that kind of primal flowing energy he wanted. And that led directly to the fish lamps in the mid-'80s, those things made of wire and broken plastic laminate. And then later, the huge El Pec sculpture in Barcelona, that giant steel fish.
It's quite a journey then, from building little scrap wood cities to engineering this massive anti-classical steel fish. And that really sets the stage for, well, probably the biggest economic story tied to a single building ever, the Bilbao effect.
Ah, Bilbao.
Yeah.
The Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, opened in Spain, 1997.
Yeah.
It's just instantly recognizable, isn't it? Those incredible curves, the shimmering titanium panels.
Totally. The New Yorker called it a masterpiece of the 20th century, and you can see why.
It looks like someone just took these giant metal ribbons and sort of dropped them into place. It's stunning.
And it completely changed the game, not just visually, but economically. That's where the term Bilbao effect comes from in urban planning, right?
Exactly. It's the idea that one piece of really iconic, innovative architecture can basically spark this huge cultural and economic revival for a whole city or region.
And the numbers are pretty staggering, aren't they?
Oh, they really are. In the first year alone, estimates put the economic boost to the Basque region at around $160 million US.
Just from the museum.
Just from the museum. And since it opened, over $3.5 billion added to the economy. It's like the ultimate case study for bold design as an investment.
Which naturally made everyone else want one. Cities all over started scrambling to replicate that success.
Which is why we see buildings like the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA, those similar cascading titanium forms. It really did become a centerpiece for revitalizing that whole area.
And also the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle, MoPPA. That one was maybe a bit more controversial in its design.
Yes, MoPA definitely sparked more
Yeah.
debate. But all this success really launched Gehry into that starchitect category, even though, as we said, he hates the term.
Yeah, he keeps insisting, I'm only an architect, rejects the whole celebrity thing.
But you can't deny the influence. He fundamentally shifted how cities thought about major architectural projects.
What's also fascinating, though, and maybe challenges that early raw aesthetic a bit, is how far his influence goes beyond just these huge civic monuments. I mean, he designed furniture, jewelry.
Oh, definitely. His career is incredibly diverse when you look closer.
Yeah.
Way back 1969 to 73, he had the Easy Edges furniture line, made entirely out of corrugated cardboard.
Cardboard furniture, like the packing material.
Exactly, taking that humble material and making something sculptural and functional. Then later he did the Betwood furniture line. And get this, each piece was named after a hockey term.
Really? A nod to his Canadian roots.
You got it. Yeah, but wait, you mentioned the challenge to the raw aesthetic.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, he starts with cardboard and chain link, maybe critiquing consumerism, but then he collaborates with Tiffany & Co. on high-end jewelry collections, designs tableware for them, does a limited edition bottle for Hennessy Cognac. That feels like kind of a contradiction.
It seems like it, right? It's the big paradox of his career. But the way he likely sees it, it's all consistent. For Gehry, the material isn't the main point. The sculptural intent is.
Okay, how so?
So whether he's manipulating cardboard or titanium for Bilbao or, golden diamonds for Tiffany, he'd argue he's applying the same artistic method, that same focus on sculptural flow, on nonlinear forms.
So the luxury materials are just another medium, like paint or clay.
Kind of. He's treating them as media for his specific kind of sculptural exploration. And he even applied that to sports. He designed the World Cup of Hockey trophy. Twice, actually. Redesigned it in 2016.
Huh. Okay, that reframes it a bit. It's not selling out, maybe, but extending the experiment. But those experiments, especially the huge curvy buildings like Bilbao, they required a massive technological leap, didn't they? How did they actually build stuff that seemed to ignore right angles?
Ah, now that is arguably his most important legacy, maybe even beyond the buildings themselves. The shapes he was designing. They were just too complex for the standard CAD computer-aided design software architects used back then.
Because normal CAD is all based on grids and straight lines.
Exactly. It couldn't handle the flow, the curves, that sort of shattered geometry he was doing.
So what did they do?
Well, his firm, Gehry Partners, they essentially had to spin off a whole tech company in 2002, Gehry Technologies. They developed this software called Digital Project.
Okay.
And they borrowed heavily from the aerospace and manufacturing industries. Those fields were already dealing with highly complex curves. This software finally allowed them to translate his really free-form sculptural designs into precise data that builders could actually use. It linked the vision to the reality of construction.
Wow. So basically, out of necessity, his firm kind of accidentally becomes this huge innovator in architectural software.
Pretty much. Solve the fundamental problem. How do you build a sculpture that people can walk inside? It's a perfect example of his drive for innovation.
Okay, so we've got the materials, the sculpture, the economics, the tech. But let's circle back quickly to those early political ideals. The Harvard disillusionment. Did that progressive streak stick with him?
It seems so. Despite the global fame and huge budgets, he's maintained a real commitment to pro bono work, especially in Los Angeles.
Which connects right back to that idea of socially responsible design he started with.
Exactly. He's dedicated time recently to projects like the Children's Institute down in Watts and the Youth Orchestra Los Angeles YOLO's Educational Center. Projects focused on community impact, using design to lift up neighborhoods, not just attract tourists.
So putting it all together, Gehry's career is just full of these fascinating contradictions, isn't it?
Absolutely brilliant contradictions.
Yeah.
Starts with scrapwood cities, rejects the establishment, champions humble materials with this raw aesthetic, then engineers these massive, spectacular structures that literally reshape economies through the Bilbao effect.
He's the ultimate architectural maverick, always resisting labels, whether it's starchitect or deconstructivist. But I want to leave you, our listener, with one last little detail, something that I think really humanizes him and speaks to his integrity.
Ah. You mean The Simpsons appearance?
Exactly.
Wow.
He voiced himself in an episode back in 2005, designed a concert hall for Springfield. Huge pop culture moment, but he actually came to regret it.
Yeah, he did express regret, which sounds weird, right? Being on The Simpsons.
Totally. Why would he regret that?
Because there's this gag in the episode. He crumples up a piece of paper, throws it down, and says something like, "There's your concert hall." He felt that joke, funny as it was, created this huge public misunderstanding. It made people think his complex forms were just random, arbitrary, just screwing up paper, when in reality they were the result of intense, technologically advanced, sculptural engineered rigor.
So even at peak fame, he was protective of the actual process, the intellectual work behind the seemingly chaotic forms.
Fiercely protective.
Incredible. So here's the question for you to think about. How does an architect who got called the apostle of chain link fencing become the guy Vanity Fair called the most important architect of our age? What happens when an artist puts fun and sculpturally exciting experiences ahead of traditional rules and ends up changing architecture and economics forever? That's your deep dive challenge.